Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of the Neurodivergent Navigator Podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Warren, and today I'll be discussing and exploring how to explain autism to a child, whether they have autism themselves or know of someone who does. In this episode, we will look at why I am making this episode and why I think this is an important topic, how, in my opinion, you should explain autism or neurodivergency to a child, what you should do when explaining, and what you should not do when explaining. Before we start, however, I would first like to clarify that I am not a professional, and this is just my honest opinion and advice as an autistic person and advocate. Nonetheless, I hope this helps and I hope you enjoy this episode, and also happy World Autism Awareness Day. So, why am I making this episode and why do I think that this is an important topic? Well, I am making this episode because it can be a common concern among parents, guardians, or adults in general how to explain to a child that they have a disability like autism or what autism is in general. As well as that, because autism is an invisible disability, meaning it's not visible or apparent from the outside, it can cause confusion and uncertainty in a child in understanding why they are different from others. I also think that this topic of explaining autism to children is an important one on a personal level. To be honest, I sometimes experience these feelings of confusion and uncertainty myself in my own childhood, not understanding why I was different from other children. I honestly believe that if I knew what autism was more clearly and at an earlier age, it would have likely prevented some of these occasional feelings of confusion, uncertainty, and sometimes alienation I experienced as a child. It also may have helped the people around me understand and accept me and other autistic children better too if they knew what autism was. And this leads me on to my next thought. How, in my opinion, should you actually explain autism to a child, whether it's because they have it themselves or they know of someone who does? This may also be applied to the process of trying to explain some other neurodivergent disorders too. Well, in my opinion, if you're planning on trying to explain autism to a child, particularly if they have it, you should make it clear to them that autistic people are different from other people. Even though this can be difficult to say, clarifying this can prevent the likelihood of a child with autism trying to suppress their autistic traits or masking in order to try and fit in. It also makes a child aware that they might need extra help in other areas different from others, and that's okay, and it prevents a child questioning if they are different from others in the first place. However, you should also ensure when saying this that being different is not implied to be a bad thing. Language use can be a very important thing, and you should use positive words and phrases when explaining autism to a child, such as, "You think and see things differently to other kids, but that's not a bad thing. It makes you unique." But, above all else, I believe that the most important thing that should be done when explaining autism is reassuring a child that they are supported, loved, and cared for. I know firsthand that living with autism, especially as a child, isn't always easy, and it is no superpower. It can take time to accept, understand, and adapt to living with. This is why it is important to let a child know that if they ever need help or confused in regards to autism, that you are there to support, guide, and help them if they need it. So, what are some things that you should do when explaining autism to a child, and what are some things that you should not do when explaining autism to a child? One of the things that first comes to my mind is the idea of shoving a device like an iPad in a child's face to let them figure it out for themselves. This is something I am strongly against. Because autism is a spectrum, it is different for everyone. Potentially, if a child came across a specific trait online that they do not experience as an autistic person, they may try to deny they have autism out of confusion, for example. Actively learning about autism with a child benefits both you and the child, and it can reassure them that they are not alone in this journey of acceptance, understanding, and adaptation. It also reassures them that if they have any questions or feel confused, they will likely come to you first for answers and not Google, Google may not always have the right answers or ones specific to them. Personally, if I had a question about anything and had the slightest notion that either of my parents would know the answer, I would ask them before I Google it. Another thing you should not do is portray autism as either a superpower or a terrible disorder to live with. I believe both of these are negative ideas. Saying autism is a superpower, while most think it's a positive phrase to use, especially towards children, I beg to differ. I strongly believe that this phrase is misleading, untrue, and harmful. Calling autism a superpower invalidates the daily genuine struggles that autistic people can have, because a superpower implies autism is a strength and could not be a struggle, and obviously no support or guidance is needed with something that's seen as a strength. In addition to that, calling autism a superpower creates the idea of autistic people having to be extraordinary in order for them to be valued. If autism is seen as a superpower and a strength, autistic people are then expected to not be struggling with it. In simple terms, I think the phrase just gives the idea there are basically no challenges with having autism, even though there can be for many. On the other hand, saying autism is a terrible disorder to live with is just plain mean, to be honest. It implies that there is no hope for someone to be able to accept, understand, or live with their autism. It also implies that they suffer from autism rather than just having autism. In my opinion, what I would suggest is that you should let a child know that autism can be both challenging and special. Autistic people see and experience the world differently, which is unique, but having autism can be challenging and a struggle to live with sometimes. But now I go back to my point from before and the main point I want to get across in this episode. Yes, it is or can be difficult to explain to a child that they have a disability like autism or explain what autism is in general. But I believe the most important thing you can do is to let a child know that if they ever need help or feel confused in regards to autism or any neurodivergent disorder for that matter, that you are there to support, guide, and help them if they need it, whether they have autism or any neurodivergent disorder or not. When explaining autism, especially if a child has autism, I believe you should definitely reassure them that they are supported, loved, and cared for. Doing so can go a very long way in helping them accept, adapt to living with, and understand their autism in their life. I know in my own life that receiving this support has definitely helped me in my own journey with my autism. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Neurodivergent Navigator Podcast. I hope this episode helped you learn about and get a better insight into how to explain autism to a child and the other elements to do with it. Have a great day or night, and as always, stay weird.